Skull Buffs, baby.
Welcome on into the first edition of SBS Basketball Live alongside Liam Howard, Paxton Haynes. He's Harrison Simeone. I'm Shane Holcomb, your host. Colorado has started their Big 12 play in both the women's and the men's schedules now. Liam, I'm going to hand this over to you first. First thoughts on the season as a whole from the men's side. Tab Boyle's squad started strong in Big 12 play, but they've lost their last four.
Yeah, absolutely. Got off to the first 8-0 start in over 70 years. It was a huge moment for this basketball team. But they had some moments in that conference, that non-conference play schedule, where they showed what they can be at times. But that was a lot of the that was a lot of the second half success for that team. And they have now gotten into Big 12 play and realized that's not something that they can rely on, even with the home court advantage. It's a lot harder to play and win in the Big 12 if you're not playing a full 40 minutes of basketball. I take a look at the Texas Tech game as an example, a game that they were down 24 points in at one point and had to claw back, made it all the way back because of a second half performance, but it still wasn't enough.
Absolutely, and you look at that best start in forever for this Buffaloes team. We've seen what this team can be at their best. At their best, they are like great shooting. They've got production from all different sources, but a little bit down the stretch here in the Big 12 especially, we're seeing them slow down a little bit. Like you said, Liam, they're struggling to finish games. They're struggling to prepare and play a full 40 minutes. But you take a look at some of the big wins they've had, that big win over Washington earlier in the season, winning that early season tournament. They got ASU, another big quad 2 win. But then you look at some of those other losses, that tough one to CSU, that tough one to West Virginia, obviously that embarrassing one to Northern Colorado. And then especially one of the big things for this team that I think has been really kind of struggling for them and really showing here in Big 12 play has been rebounding. They're really struggling on the glass, and it's been a separator against some of these great teams. You look, they're 142nd in NCAA in rebound margin, still positive, but as a team, they need to get that back, be more consistent on the glass. They're 192nd in rebounds per game, and especially offensive rebounding. They're 222nd in offensive rebounds as a team in NCAA, and on the other side, they're allowing way too many offensive boards. We saw it yesterday against Kansas and just in Big 12 as a whole. They're allowing their opponents to get too many second chance opportunities. But as a whole, I think you got to hand it to Colorado. They're being a much better team, definitely building on what we saw last year. And overall, we'll see how they move on down the stretch in Big 12.
And Harrison, on the other side of the coin, J.R. Payne's squad, similar story, right? Successful in the non-conference, they maybe wasn't the toughest, but they've struggled recently in the Big 12.
Yeah, I think the first thing you notice is that non-conference lately for J.R. Payne teams have been kind of a given. They're going to be good. They're going to, beat up on some lesser opponents because a lot of them are, again, coming on the road, playing in Boulder, dealing with the altitude, and that's not enough against some of these J.R. Payne teams that are really hustle first, defensive. And I like what I saw a lot out of the defensive side of the ball for Coach Payne's team so far. But you look at the offense, they never really found a go-to player, and they never really addressed their weaknesses. Even in some of those games against lesser teams, they lost to Montana State at home. That never happened. So you look at the team now versus where they were in non-conference, and you see some of the same issues over and over. The shooting, the rebounding, we'll get into it a little bit later, but the defense still has remained solid, and I think that will keep them in games against any team in the nation.
That's right, and a glimpse of success too. Just last week, a win over number 15th ranked then Iowa State, right? One of the best scorers in the country. They shut down Audie Crooks. But guys, let's get into the biggest improvements from last season, especially on the men's side. And I'll start with you, actually, Paxton, on this one, because you talked about how they've been better defensively somewhat, but the rebound is still an issue. But improvement side, what do you see from the men? Again, this is a team that didn't win a conference game for a while. They already have 2 this season.
Absolutely. I think the number one thing is just scoring by far. The team is way better, putting the ball in the basket. They have about 83 points per game so far this season. Last year, they couldn't even get to 70 average over the course of the entire year. 4 players have got more than 10 points per game in Johnson, Hargress, Ronchik, and Dak. They are getting most of their points from the bench. They are actually 26th in NCAA in bench points this season. A lot of that obviously comes from Isaiah Johnson, who's now in that starting lineup. But still, they're getting a lot of production from a lot of different sources, and it's working out really, really well for them and allowing them to get themselves in positions to win big-time games.
Yeah, I think absolutely. When you're looking at the team last season, it was the major issue was when there wasn't a Bangot Dak in the game, when there wasn't a Sebastian Ranchik, somebody to break through and put up a lot by themselves, then the game completely fell apart. That is where this team is different, in my opinion. I think that the depth of this team is an absolute strength, and the Buffaloes capitalized early on with Isaiah Johnson coming off of the bench. Alone McKaylee has come off the bench and done well as well, and those guys are able to bring quick scoring. They're able to get buckets in bunches, and that's why they were able to have a lot of that success in those second halves, and they have continued that as well, is that they're able to mount comebacks really quickly. You can look at the clock with very little time left and say this team can still come back, and I think that has been a major strength of theirs. And now they still have the depth on the bench. You've got the likes of McKaylee still coming off the bench, Jalen Holland, who I think is their best on-ball defender on that team, and then Felix Casares, who's no pushover on defense either. He's now moved to the bench, and I think he's a much better fit there. So the depth of this team still incredible and can win them games down the stretch.
And Harrison, it's the depth for the men's, but what is it for J.R. Payne's squad so far?
It's been the transfers. Every player that they brought in has done what they asked them to do. They've played defense, and that's what they did. They went out and got 3 all-conference defenders, Anel Lutat, Desiree Wooten, and Zion Walker. All 3 have been very successful within the system J.R. Payne, assistant coach Dariana Towns, they instill every day. They play great defense, they hustle, they make all the right plays in the style J.R. wants to play, because last year you had a lot of over-reliance on Frida Foreman. That was the centerpiece, and then she got hurt, and the team just kind of unraveled from there. They dealt with more injuries, and they didn't really have any form of scoring. Now you have up to 4 or 5 players that can average 10 a game, that can put up 16 to 20 at any given night. Logan Greer, another player, has played out of her mind as a freshman, earning a regular starting position. So you have a lot of these newcomers that have instantly made impacts, and I think that is something you can carry on going forward, even though it may not be working out all the time right now.
Well, we'll touch on a little bit later in the show some of their struggles defensively. But like you said, Desiree Wooten as well is someone who's stand out for me recently as someone who can really score the basket, and they're going to need that down the stretch. You
saw Iowa State. She put up 24.
Yeah.
I mean, she can put up against some of the better defenses in the nation. She is fearless. She puts up shots no matter what happens. It just really depends on if it's falling or not. She's able to come off the bench for the team as well. Like you talk about Isaiah Johnson as the bench scorer. You have another bench scoring guard in Desiree Wooten. She came in from North Texas. Not really thought of as really a player that could lead a team, but all of a sudden you're looking at her as the person you'd want to go to in those clutch situations where we're going to touch on later, CU has struggled in.
That's right, Harrison. But turn over to the other side of the coin, guys. Obviously, both these teams have had some struggles this season, but you see the full screen graphic on your screen there. Liam, there's concerns in this team right now, especially for the men's side. Tad Boyle has talked a lot about physicality and how they've kind of been soft and rebounding. But what's maybe your biggest concern for their team right now?
Well, and I've talked about it a little bit with the second half performances, but that also means that the first half has not been what they've wanted. And I think a lot of that physicality, those struggles happen in the first. That is because they come out sluggish. This team looks sluggish time and time again. And after the Texas Tech game, I thought it was very interesting. Tad Boyle said that he did not feel like this team underprepared. He felt like the preparation was good, even though they did start that game off solidly, but then that deficit started to build up as halftime approached, and surely enough, they went out against Cincinnati later on in the week and had one of the worst first halves, if not the worst first half they've had the entire season. So preparation stinks, in my opinion, and I think that that's something this team deeply needs to address, whatever the case may be. Even if it's just changing the routine for game day, they cannot keep showing up as sluggish as they have been.
Absolutely, and that Cincinnati game, I mean, that game was over in about 5 minutes. I mean, just from the jump, Colorado just had nothing going for them, and it looks like a big preparation issue right now. But another thing that I think that Colorado is struggling with a little bit is allowing those big runs. They are letting these teams get put up, 10 straight, get on these huge runs, and Colorado just really can't fill that gap. And another problem with that is their inability to finish games, or at least their struggles to finish games. You look at big-time losses like TTU, Texas Tech, they couldn't quite finish that one out. They almost had to come back, and then right there at the 1-yard line, they just couldn't finish. Kansas, another game, just like down the stretch, gets down to those final 10 minutes, and they got nothing, especially in that Kansas game on Tuesday night. To finish it out, they went 4 for 15 from the field. That kind of stuff is not going to win you basketball games. You look at Colorado State, another one, that Northern Colorado game, just like so tight in Colorado, time and time again this season, they're just really struggling to find a way to win.
Well, Paxton talked about those runs they're giving up to these teams. Kansas went on an 11-1 run last night in the 5-minute mark where that game was a 1-point deficit, and it was 10 really quickly like that. But Harrison, where are some of the areas that J.R. Payne and the women are struggling right now?
They're glaring. They're shooting, and then there's those clutch situations like I mentioned a moment ago. They're 25% shooting. That's one of the worst in the nation.
I think we could do better as a collective.
Yeah, not just power conferences. Any team in the country, they don't have shooting, and they struggled from the get-go. But then you lose your two best jump shooters on the roster. Claire O'Connor's been out for a while with a foot or ankle, and Kennedy Sanders now out for the season with a hip injury. So they were both shooting the best on the team. Claire O'Connor, one of the transfers I didn't mention, brought in for her shooting prowess, was going to be kind of that go-to shooter. And without Frida Foreman, it's like this team just forgot how to shoot three-pointers in general. Desiree Wooden can do it occasionally. She's the best shooter for now, but I think it's only around 30%. Yeah. So you look at Logan Greer, she can shoot some jumpers, but just jump shooting in general has been difficult, and that's made teams game plan against it. They've gone against zone so many times, teams can just bank on them not shooting well, and then they can just pack the paint. J.R. Payne's team is just very reliant on getting to the basket, and that hurts them in those clutch spots. Like I mentioned a moment ago, some defensive lapses happen every now and then as well that let these teams come back in these games. Colorado was led in every fourth quarter of the season, including against a top 10 team right now in Louisville back early in the season. So you look at the fourth quarter scoring, it has to be better. It has to be more creative. There has to be some sort of way you figure out how this team can shoot without its two best jump shooters. But you'll get Claire O'Connor back sooner than later. I was there at practice today. She was back practicing, so that's what you hope for. But they're glaring right now. It's the shooting, it's the clutch play. But they're fixable. I think they're fixable down the stretch.
Well, you talked about it too, but they've got some people that are coming back from injury. Kenny Sanders is one that's going to be out for the rest of the season,
yes.
right? And I mean, we might touch on her later, but she's also someone who can shoot the three-ball decently.
Yeah.
That might be someone that they could be missing right now. I digress, though. We're going to transition to our next segment, guys, which is both of these teams, if you have been following them, especially the past couple years, more on the women's side, but it seems like they're always on the periphery of the NCAA tournament when it comes to resume building. CU, both men and women have had opportunities recently that they haven't really quite got to get over the line. But Liam, I'll start with you on this one. Taking a look at the men's resume so far, what stands out to you?
Yeah, like you said, they've been right there.
Yeah.
There's the unfortunate thing about the wins that they've had is that they've been right there with a lot of wins that you could point to and say that right there makes Colorado a viable team to push towards the Big 12 tournament. But then they've let them slip. Texas Tech's an example. Kansas now an example. But if you're looking at their biggest wins, I will say Arizona State, Utah, starting off the Big 12 2-0, that showed what this team can be against opponents in the Big 12 when they're at their best. I think that Utah game especially, that was a dominant game by the Buffaloes. They played a full 40 minutes in that game, and there was no real contention there. That was a fully dominant game by the Buffaloes, and that is what they've now asserted in that game. This is what we can be in the Big 12. Now it's just about doing it consistently.
Yeah, and Paxton, you saw on the graphic earlier, but CU is 0-4 in those all-important quad 1 opportunities. But like Liam was saying, 2 quad 2 wins right now that are will boost down the line. What have you seen in these games that matter recently?
Absolutely. I think you said it great, Liam. That ASU and that Utah game, those were really big wins for this Colorado team, really proving what they can be. And now it's just about down the stretch, who can they beat? We got UCF coming up. It is about that's a kind of game that Colorado has to win, has to take care of, to show that they can beat these teams down the stretch and show that they are worthy of being taken a hard look at in the Big 12 and in the bubble, as this is a team that can play for a championship.
Yeah, and Harrison, when it comes to the women, they've obviously had that loss a couple weeks ago against Montana State that will hurt them, down the stretch. But again, the team that they just lost to, UCF, they were 164 in the net before Sunday. That's a game they should have pulled away, but they dropped it. That could impact them.
And it's the road. It's going on the road. It's just not getting it done away from Boulder. You have the advantage with the altitude and everything. And it looked like the team was playing more comfortable on the road than they had last season, where they only had one conference win on the road. They put Baylor and Oklahoma State up against it. They were winning in the fourth quarter of both of those games, close games down the stretch, but like I said, with that clutch play, you're going to look back at those fourth quarters and really regret it when you're looking at your resume.
Well, thankfully, when you're a power conference like the Big 12, there's going to be those opportunities, though, for some upsets and some resume boosters. So where do you see, CU, especially on the women's side, when the schedule sets up in the next couple of weeks? What are some of the important games they got to get in the win column?
Well, they go to Kansas next week. On both Kansas schools, Kansas State. Those aren't schools that are powerhouses, but you just have to see them win on the road.
Just get one of them, right?
One or both, hopefully. They only have 5 more road games. They have more home games left. So you bank on them winning at least several of them and playing up to their competition. Like they did with Iowa State. They have Oklahoma State on Sunday and then West Virginia. Then TCU is a huge game for their chances. So if you bank on them winning at least one of those games, pulling off another upset like they did last season, even when they were struggling, they still managed to beat West Virginia, number 10, Kansas State. You have to just hope they can win some on the road, get a winning record somehow, just scrounge together something, and then you have momentum, then you have those quad wins you need to put together NCAA tournament-worthy campaign.
So it's weird because the quad system works a little bit differently in the women's.
Yeah.
You're not as rewarded for those road wins,
It's
especially when it comes to the Iowa State game at home. I know that was only a quad 2 win, but we'll see if CU has some of those upset opportunities down the stretch.
They got to hope those Cyclones get it together.
I mean, they've lost, 4 or 5 in a
To
row?
have the best player in the nation, arguably, and then 5 losses in a row, getting stomped by Oklahoma State, it's unacceptable. They need Addie Brown back. I think that's their key.
So this is the question I want to pose to you guys now, right, to Paxton and Liam, is obviously there's opportunities for upsets, right, for this Colorado men's team, but are you looking more into the consistency part of things, being the teams that they should be beaten, or grabbing 1 or 2 of those upsets? Paxton, I'll go to you first.
I think taking a look at some potential upsets, considering how Colorado is good at playing up to the competition, like we just saw against Kansas. Of course, they couldn't finish it out, but still, I'm confident in this Colorado team to play up to the competition. I'm taking a look at a couple games here, Shane. I got Iowa State on January 29th and then Houston on February 28th. I think those are 2 teams that Colorado can take it to and can pull off a huge upset on. That would be really, really great for their resume. Against Iowa State, I think that defensive zone scheme that Tad Boyle has been liking recently, I like it against this Iowa State team. I think they can shut down Joshua Jefferson. I think as long as CU rebounds and as long as Momcilovic isn't lights out, which, always a tough bet. But that's a team that I think Colorado has a good shot at beating. And also Houston, that's a good offense versus a good defense. As long as Colorado takes care of the ball, which they've done a good job at this season so far, definitely way better than last season, they can't turn the ball over. Houston has 9 steals per game. They're going to bounce all over that. But that's another team that I think that Colorado can play up to the competition against. And I see it as, maybe a dream, but I think that that's a team that Colorado can beat.
Well, and absolutely. And I think that this Colorado team will need to mix in some upsets there, but they got to start at square one. They have got to beat the teams that they should be beating, and that is where they have really stumbled at points in this season. So down the stretch, UCF, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Utah. These are the games that they need to be winning. They need to pile up these wins that are against the teams that are objectively less talented than this Colorado roster, and then they can start mixing in the upsets. I will say, Iowa State, they got to be licking their chops a little bit. Iowa State has been struggling. They lose 2 straight, starting with that Kansas loss, and then they do pick up a win against UCF, but that was a UCF team that turned the ball over 19 times in that game. Colorado just held 3, they limited themselves to 3 turnovers against a number 19 ranked Kansas team that is known for playing aggressive and forcing those turnovers. Colorado's not going to do that same thing against Iowa State, so the road environment's going to be tough, but that's got to be the upset they're eyeing if they're going to get one at this point.
But Harrison, I can kind of sense where you're going with the games that I'm going to ask this next question, which is where can CU and J.R. Payne's squad not afford to drop? I mean, they got to start with win on the road, right? But is there other games like UCF where they just can't lose?
It's at home. They play BYU at home later this season. But that's definitely when you need to take care of. You need to take care of business against those lighter schools that are going to come to Boulder and play them there. But I think you have to pull up one of those upsets. Is it Oklahoma State? Is it West Virginia? Is it TCU? I think it could be 2 or maybe all 3. TCU is a tough team, but they're vulnerable. They're not unbeatable. There's no juggernaut in this conference. So I think they can compete with anyone, and that can give them a lot of confidence, even if they don't necessarily win some of those road games, but getting into the conference tournament and going up against those stronger schools, you end up in maybe the mid seeds again. Hopefully you get a first round bye, but give them some confidence against those tough teams, so then maybe you can make a run and beat some teams that maybe they wouldn't expect it to, and then all of a sudden they're in March Madness again.
It's almost like, guys, the men's and the women's Big 12 conferences are so different because, like Harrison said, there's not really one juggernaut in the women's, but on the men's side, you've got 5 teams in the top 15 of the AP poll. So, Liam, obviously we talked about those games for the upsets, but what are some games that, again, CU men cannot afford to lose?
Yeah, I mean, going back to it, I will say that especially the number one that I look at is that Utah game in March. That Utah game closing out the stretch of Big 12 play. They cannot lose that Utah game, a team that they've already beat. Obviously, UCF coming up is a game they should win. A team that turns the ball over 19 times against a team that just turned the ball over 3 times in their most recent game. That turnover battle is going to be won by the Buffaloes, and that should be something that propels them to that win. So it really just has to be these games that they are stacking up throughout the rest of conference play. They have a good few of them on the schedule. Obviously, there's those juggernauts, and they are hoping to upset them likely in the conference tournament because that's where it's going to matter the most, especially if you're looking to make that March Madness spot. They're going to need it, in my opinion. By that point, they're going to need a conference championship win, and last year's team was able to put together a conference championship run as a Cinderella, as a 16 seed, furthest a 16 seed has ever made it in a conference championship, and this team is a little bit more talented than that one, so I wouldn't put it off the table, especially if they can build some confidence with those wins.
Absolutely. You're talking about teams that this Colorado team has to be taken seriously. The 4 that I've got in mind are Central Florida, TCU, Arizona State, and then Oklahoma State. Those feel like games that if we are going to take this Colorado team seriously and as a team that can legitimately be playing in March, these are the kind of games that you have to win. You have to prove yourself that you have what it takes to beat these teams, beat the best in the Big 12, and go, and like you said, Liam, make that kind of run, especially into the Big 12 tournament. That UCF game really coming up, that's going to be huge. Colorado's already lost 4 in a row. UCF would make it 5 in a row. Like that cannot happen. That cannot be a team to take seriously, a team that loses 5 in a row. So UCF is a big game. I know that Colorado can outscore them. And like I just said a million times, it's the kind of game that Colorado has to win to be taken seriously.
Well, the theme I take out of this discussion, guys, is all those games are coming quick and fast, right? And what actually wasn't quick and fast, though, and we'll get into it in our next segment as we take a look in the film breakdown with Harrison and I, is the women's defense in transition. So we'll take a quick break and we'll send it over to the monitor, and Harrison and I are going to break down some film from the women's team. Welcome into this week's edition of Film Breakdown alongside CU women's basketball analyst Harrison Simeone. I'm Shane Holcomb. Harrison, Jared Payne's squad, another road defeat the other day, this time at the hands of UCF. What went wrong in this game?
Yeah, it was coming off their biggest win of the year. Number 19, Iowa State at home. That was the difference. They love to play up to their competition at home, but on the road, they tend to play down to their competition. Still haven't found a win on the road all season, counting non-conference and conference. Going all the way across the country this time to UCF, came out a little bit sluggish. And as we look at this first clip here, Tabitha Betson, just before anything starts, you see 2 UCF players just completely flying by. And so you have a nice pump fake. You have a great situation for Colorado. But one thing I wanted to point out is spacing. Yeah. And that's why they came out and didn't really put, a UCF team that was 1-5 in conference going into this in its, in how the game should have gone. So you have this flyby, and then you immediately have Eneo Dutat here cutting in from the corner.
They're calling for the ball. Look how wide open they are.
When you already have Jade Crook right here, you essentially have a 5-on-3 with these girls out of the equation. You have 2 3-point shooters right there who are open, but still kind of close to each other. The spacing in here is just all wonky, and it leads to Tabitha Betson not really being in a good position to make a decision. She still should have looked to her left and just found 2 shooters, but she winds up just trying to touch it inside to 2 players that are really scrunched together. It leads to a steal for UCF, easy bucket, and Colorado in that second quarter let up a big run. They had a good start, but really that quarter was a deciding moment in this game and kind of let UCF have some faith in themselves to pull off what was, I guess, an upset in this case.
Especially in a game you're supposed to win, right? You hate to give up opportunities in transition. This is something that happened a lot, especially in that second quarter, like you said. But now let's touch on perimeter defense. This team has struggled to defend the three-point line this year. It happened again on Sunday.
Yeah, there was, a lot to be said about how CU's played defense all season. They've been very solid. That's what's kept them in a lot of their games. It's had them leading in every fourth quarter they've played at some point this season, but they've let up a lot of runs late in games. So you see here early in the fourth, up 3. They're in a zone here, and right now you're dealing with a hot shooter on UCF who they just send a double at the three-point line for some reason, and then that lets 2 players that can shoot
wide open, and then you just get space and just allow the three. It was just inexplicable that they had to go in a zone there in as tight a situation as you can. You want to play man-to-man.
Yeah.
And later on in this fourth quarter, with 4 minutes left, now you're down one, you're having to play man, you're being forced into a situation where Zion Walker is really up against this driving UCF Knight, and then you just let, again, even though it's man, that you see Zion Walker attack and double team, even though you really don't see anything there from that weak side, and then you allow another open three. UCF, huge shot in a game where threes are incredibly impactful. Colorado, not a good three-point shooting team.
25% as a team this year.
Yeah, 25% is atrocious in all aspects. They have some shooters, some players that can make an impact from the three-point line, but this was inexcusable in all aspects, this loss.
Yeah, well, and a team that already has some flaws on offense, J.R. Payne's squad prides themselves, hangs their hat on their defense. And again, spacing caused a lot of issues this weekend, Harrison, but also you got to guard the three, especially when you're in a zone. That's what a zone is built to do, to stop shooters from the perimeter, and they just didn't do that this weekend. But if I know anything, it's that J.R. Payne could use Harrison Simeon on her bench going forward this season, and we'll send you guys back to the desk. Well, thanks, Harrison. It was good talking about the women and their flaws so far this season. It'll be interesting to see how they fare down the stretch. But now it's time for this week's Pick'ems, guys, and we'll start in the Big 12 men's side of things, a top 12 showdown in Texas. Houston goes to Texas Tech. Liam, I'll start with you. Who you got?
Yeah, huge game, and that road environment for Houston is going to be tough. But for me, this Texas Tech team is a little too streaky. It was even seen here against Colorado. They took that 24-point lead, and they went into a drought. And I think that is something that is not going to stack up well against Houston. Houston has built a brand of basketball that is focused on consistency. They're going to shut down Texas Tech.
I like that. I think last time these two teams played, Houston did not play their A game, and yet they still won. They had no points from the bench and still got it done. That defense was able to limit JT Toppin, and I think they do it again. Not to mention Texas Tech, they turn that ball over a lot, almost 11 times per game. And like you said, Liam, a little streaky. I think Houston and that tough, suffocating defense pounces on Texas Tech. Give me the Cougars.
Well, Harrison, they got two of the away teams. Who you got this one?
I see it differently. I've got the home Texas Tech Red Raiders. I think they're unbeaten on the road. It's not. I know that they have not lost at home all season. So I think JT Toppin, he doesn't have bad games often. I think he's going to learn from that game the first time they played Houston, where they really tested them. It was on the road at Houston, only lost by 4. So I think JT Toppin's going to play well, but you also look at Christian Anderson and how they've been able to work off each other all season long. So I got Texas Tech in a really fun, really close game.
Well, before you're asking, well, where's Shane's pick? I plead the fifth on this segment, guys. We're going to transition to the next game, which is TCU versus Baylor. More of teams considering towards CU's level of play, and we'll see those games will be important for them. But they play each other this weekend, Liam. Who you got?
Yeah, well, we just talked about Colorado's need to stack up those, those quad 2 wins and those games that they should win. This is that game for both of these teams. For me, I'm looking at TCU in this game. They are the definition of a Jekyll and Hyde team. They beat Florida when they were ranked, and then they go and they take teams like Michigan, like BYU, like Kansas to their absolute limits, but then they opened up the season with a loss to New Orleans. They lost to Utah.
Don't disrespect Master P, okay?
Well, let's talk about Incarnate Word then. Incarnate Word took them to their absolute limits in non-conference, and they really, I was saying this during the break, they roll the dice, it seems like, on what team they're going to be when they walk into the arena every single night. And for me, Baylor is not going to let that slide. I think Baylor is going to pick up the victory.
Both these teams are kind of in tough stretches right now, but Baylor feels a little bit particularly uncharacteristic to me. I think you look at what TCU's been able to do recently in those losses, taking Kansas to overtime and going toe-to-toe with BYU. Give me the dice roll, Horned Frogs.
Oh.
Yeah, TCU's been very inconsistent. I think that they've shown that a lot all year. And Baylor, while they may not be the most consistent team on the planet, they're a team that's getting it together. They have some scoring, a 20.4 game scorer in Cameron Carr. They're a well-coached team that's just trying to get it together. And they're once again at home. And I like the home atmosphere. I like how Baylor is playing for basically their seasons in these next few weeks and staying in March Madness contention. So I got Baylor in this one.
Well, guys, it helps when you sign a former G League player to your team. And albeit Baylor, that guy isn't doing so hot for them right now.
I'm not saying that's working out exactly.
There will be a segment on this show, a sneak preview about sound off on the NCAA. Get your act together right now because we can't be having pro players come back to their college schools. I digress. Let's head to Boulder, though, in the CU Event Center on Sunday, guys. J.R. Payne's team needs a win. Liam, who you got? They're playing Oklahoma State.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm typically partial to Colorado, but this is not football season anymore. Oklahoma State's a sleeper team. 3 of their 4 losses came to ranked teams, and St. John's was their other loss. St. John's is no pushover team either. They are another very tough team. I think Oklahoma State is flying under the radar, and they're staring Colorado down the face right now. I'm not going to take the Buffs. I'm going Oklahoma State.
Yeah, it's been kind of a tale of two teams between that Cyclones win and then that Central Florida loss. You said it, Harrison, this Colorado team needs to find a way to score. They got to fix it, but you called it fixable. That defense is not going to pull the weight forever. It's going to be on the offense to get it done, but I think they do. I think it's a good get-back game for them. Give me the Buffs.
See, and Harrison, the Cowgirls are receiving votes in the AP poll right now. Like Liam and Paxton are saying, this is a team that is on a 3-game win streak. They got a lot of momentum. How do you see this one playing out?
I think it comes down to how Colorado can defend the perimeter. Oklahoma State is an excellent shooting team. That's what's gotten them ranked before, and now they're kind of on the fringe. But Colorado has to lock down defensively if they want to win this game. It's at home, so I think it'll help their offense in wearing down Oklahoma State's defense down the stretch. I think Desiree Wooten has another solid game. But I like how the front court played against Oklahoma State when they went on the road to Stillwater. And I think Colorado gets it done on the road, at home against the Cowgirls.
Well, CU and Denver sports fans, guys, they're going to have a bit of a conundrum on Sunday because this game's at the same time as the Broncos AFC title game. I think I know which most people are watching, but there'll be a lot of people at the event center anyways. I digress. I couldn't not throw in a Jared Stidham reference in there. Let's head over, though, to Tad Boyle's team. They host UCF on Saturday at lunchtime. Liam, this CU team needs a win. Do they get it?
Yeah, well, quickly, happy Stidham season to all who celebrate. But this is another game that Denver and Colorado sports fans are going to be looking at heavily with the condition of this Colorado team. This almost seems like a check for signs of life if you are a Colorado fan. And it's a must-win. You're at home against UCF, who just lost by 30 to Iowa State. It is Iowa State, but 30 is a lot. And, of course, I mentioned earlier, those 19 turnovers is characteristic of who UCF is as a basketball team. Colorado did a great job of taking care of the ball against Kansas, and even though he's not a guy who usually hangs his hat on anything during losses, Tad Boyle said you can take a little bit of pride in that. You can take some pride in the fact that you only turn the ball over 3 times. I think Colorado's going to win that turnover battle and win the game, maybe even by 1 million.
We've said it all show long. This is a game Colorado has to win to be taken seriously. I think they can do it. I think that this defense can shut down Riley Google and Temis Falks. Home court advantage. Sunday matinee, I think Colorado puts on a show. Give me the Buffaloes.
And Harrison, are we going to do a clean sweep here, or you got the Cowboys?
Oh man, I might disappoint y'all. I actually think UCF has a very good chance in this game. I think maybe, despite some of their recent losses in conference play, we're sleeping on them a little bit. They're a balanced team. They're a team that's also kind of in a similar situation to Colorado, that's playing over its skis and trying to be taken seriously. They have a lot of double-digit scorers. They have very solid defense at times. They have shown they're capable of playing both ends successfully. And I actually am going to go out on a limb here and say UCF gets it done.
Well, you're supporting kind of the UCF color tie tonight, so I'm not too surprised.
It's Buffs colors.
Buffs too. It could be
It's
either
also
or.
Buffs. I mean, it's probably a good thing, though, that everyone picks CU. That probably means they might have actually a chance to win.
It's a fight for the black and
But-
gold.
Don't jinx it.
Again, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for tuning in to the first edition of SBS Basketball Live alongside Paxton Haynes, who just put together the best Horned Frog impression I've seen. Liam Howard still picking Colorado, per usual, alongside Harrison Simeone. I'm your host, Shane Holcomb, signing off for the night. Enjoy your evening.